but only a select number are shown in the interactive report. And it's about 1 per goal is shown in each country profile. So the question is, how were the indicators selected for the tool, and how can this be used to monitor progress in the SDGs if it leaves out many of the indicators? And then the third part of the question is, are there any opportunities for non-official data to be integrated into these tools? So this is a loaded question. So I give it to Louise to try and address all aspects.
Thank you very much. It's really a good question, and I hope I can do justice to a little bit of it. In terms of selection of the indicators, we are working for a global audience, as I was saying. So we select indicators that are mostly available across a wide spectrum of regions. So as you know, the indicator framework is very, very large. There are what we call tier 1 indicators, which are indicators for which data is widely available, methodology is well established. There are indicators that we call tier 2, whose methodology is well established, but still there is not enough data across countries. And then there are the tier 3 indicators for which not even the methodology is internationally agreed yet. So as you can imagine, not all indicators have data that is ready to be used for data visualization. So that's one of the first constraints in what data can we use to produce visualizations. But aside from data availability, I think the most important criteria for selecting what we want to visualize is what is the intention or the goals of our audience. So for instance, one of the tools I presented to you, that the content profiles, are mostly directed at this moment to a global audience, meaning UN system specialists or UN system agencies that need to work with multiple countries, and when they do so, they need an easy way to see what is the progress across the board. So we try to identify those indicators that are widely available, comparable, and that provide really a global picture. Other tools, for instance, at the national level, which are probably more important than the global tools, will need to choose data that pertains to the national priorities. So again, always focusing on the audience. The second part of the question, I think, was whether there is room for other sources of data to be integrated, and that is our aim. I think to have tools that are open. But one crucial challenge that we have is to ensure that the sources of the data are authoritative and pass through a quality process that makes them solid enough to be presented in this kind of platforms that we manage for the world. So this is an ongoing process, and we are far from where we want to be in terms of allowing the integration of additional data sources. There is work to be done in terms of interoperability, quality assurance, governance frameworks that would allow us gradually over time, I hope, to integrate what we call now non-traditional sources of data into the SDG monitoring and reporting.
Thank you, Luis, very much. So this is the last question, and I'm going to give this one to Karen, and it follows up on kind of the discussion we had in the other questions that were from the initial set. The question is about how the Colombia government uses the platform in decision making, if you have an example of that. And then the other question I'm going to link it to is if you know if the indicators and the platforms and the data that's being presented, if it's used in any local planning processes. So how the data and the visualization tools are being used in decision making, if you have an example.
Okay. For the construction of the current national political document for this government that is from 2019 from 2022 to try to identify which goals are or not close to the intermediate target because we have established for each indicators two values, one for 2018 and one for 2030. So they review those values to try to focus on those that probably were not in the way that we are planning. So and try to prioritize in somehow these goals where the data shows that probably we are not in the way that we want to. And also your question about the local planning thing, we must recognize that local authorities here are completely autonomous of what they decide. However, and this is an exercise that has been leading mostly from the planning department. We support this task with data, but there are also more tools in something called like local kit, that is a kit of tools including data, where they go through most territories in Colombia and try to show what can they consider when they are formulating the plan for that territory. It doesn't matter if it's a small one or a bigger one. So that's why the data is used. Again, it's not only data. Data is a very useful tool, but besides that, most tools must be considered. And thank you.
So thank you. So I was really putting you on the spot there. So I think you really talked about addressed it in terms of prioritizing and how we do. There's always more work we can do on ensuring that data is used and brought into the different processes. So we are at the closing minutes. So I would like to give each of you a quick minute to give some closing remarks, your thoughts, your main takeaway from our discussion here. So I will, you can have a quick minute.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your attention. I just want to emphasize that facts must be explained not only with words and numbers, but also with images. And the collaboration aspect of that is something that I am very much looking forward to. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So Karen, I'll give it to you for a closing thoughts and takeaway.
Okay, thank you. It was I really learned a lot. And one big challenge that is not only coming from visualization, also from mathematical point of view, is that still is hard to compare between goals, because the number of targets and the number of indicators is not the same in every goal. And sometimes when you are trying to build a kind of easy story, you would like to have a way to compare between goals, and still we don't have this. Again, it's not only from the visualization part, but also an additional thing must be probably done. And that's it. And also because that's a current question for me from different type of audience. So that's my reflection. And thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you. So I would like to thank the our speakers for engaging in our very rich discussion here. And I'd like to also thank all of our participants. We had, we just checked, there are 102 of us on this webinar today, which is our greatest turnout so far. So we really thank you for all your questions you've posed, both before the webinar and during the chat here. This has been a really engaging conversation. Please do follow our website and Twitter for upcoming webinars. We have we'll